Hey, Mama, and welcome back to For Moms, a Safe Space. I'm your host, Simone, and today we're diving into a beautiful topic adoption. But before we get into today's episode, I would like to take a moment to just reflect on the last 2 weeks because we had two incredibly powerful episodes regarding co parenting with a former abuser. And in those episodes, we had a listener discuss their story of personal abuse and how they were able to escape physically, but still endured a lot over the years, mentally and emotionally, from their former abuser. And then in our second episode, we were able to hear from a listener who is now an adult who witnessed abuse as a child between her two parents. And that goes to show that what happens in your child's life when they're young can have a great effect on them once they become an adult. So I just want to thank everyone who tuned in, shared their stories, or simply sat with those emotions. And if you haven't listened yet, I highly encourage you to go back because those discussions, they are powerful reminders that you are not alone. Now back to today's topic. Adoption means different things to different people. It can be filled with love and joy, but also grief, confusion, and deep questions about identity and belonging. So whether you're an adoptee, like myself, an adoptive parent, or someone considering adoption, this episode is for you. Let's be clear. Adoption isn't a one size fits all. Every adoption story is different, and the way a family is formed through adoption can depend on so many factors: legal, emotional, cultural, personal. There are several common types of adoption. You have the domestic infant adoption, and this is the one where people think of adoption. Like, this is the one that people think of. And while, yeah, it's common, it's not picture perfect like how the movies try to make it. This couple, they can't have a baby and they're experiencing infertility. Oh, we're just going to adopt. And then they go through an agency and they find out that someone's having a baby and they don't want to raise their baby. And so they want to give this baby to them. And it's so beautiful and it's picture perfect, but that's not reality. It's more complicated than that. You have to think, is this going to be open or semi-open? And what does that even mean? Are you guys going to keep in contact with the birth parents? Are you going to exchange letters? Are you going to have visits or maintain long-term relationships? Sometimes it's going to be closed off. But you know what? There is so much beauty in the transparency of open adoptions. But with that beauty also comes another side, the emotional vulnerability. Because the birth parent, they're still going to be grieving. Because adoption essentially for them is a loss. And then the adoptive parents, they're going to be experiencing anxiety around bonding. How can I bond with a child I didn't give birth to? What am I going to do when this child gets older and they start asking me questions like why they don't look like me? Why they don't look like their dad? And then from a child's point of view, there's going to be confusion and curiosity. Even in the healthiest dynamic, in the most loving household, there's still confusion and there's still curiosity. And then you have foster care adoption. And this is adoption that involves children who are in the custody of the state. And these children are often removed from their biological families due to neglect, abuse, or instability. And a lot of foster children experience multiple placements before they find their permanent home. And this instability leaves a mark. These kids, they have trust issues. Sometimes they have developmental delays or they have attachment wounds. Just think you were with your family one day and then you're pulled out and you're placed with strangers and then you get comfortable with the strangers and all of a sudden you're pulled from there and then you're placed with another set of strangers. Yeah, that's going to create some trust issues. That's going to create some attachment wounds. But if you're going to be an adoptive parent, you have to understand you have to bring love, patience, support, and oftentimes therapy. Because it's not just about saving a child, it's about showing up consistently and giving them space to heal. Because this is something that they have not experienced. And then you have kinship adoption. And this is when a relative, like a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, even an older sibling, steps in to adopt the child. And this type of adoption, it can be stabilizing, but it can be also emotionally complicated. Because yes, the child does get to stay within the family, which helps them to maintain cultural and familial ties. But sometimes those relationships can shift or blur, especially if boundaries aren't clearly defined. You may have children who are torn between loyalties, or they're struggling to understand the new roles, like their aunt is now their mom. And then for the adoptive parent, there could be guilt or pressure or even conflict with the biological parent who's still in the picture in some capacity. Now let's discuss contact. As I briefly touched on open and semi-open. So you have open adoption, which means there is some level of communication or relationship between the birth family and the adoptive family. And again, this is something that's often shown in movies where the adoptive family sends annual updates and photos, or they have regular visits or FaceTime calls, or they may even share holidays. And this is a time where the child is able to grow up with access to their story, to their roots, and they don't necessarily have to wonder where they came from. And you would like to think that all adoptions could be like that, right? No. And then you have semi-open adoptions, which a third party may provide occasional updates between the two families. And then you have closed adoption, which for years was the most popular, most common type of adoption. And this is a no contact at all. The child's original birth certificate is either going to be sealed or there will be no identifying information about the birth parents. Now, in today's society, there is a shift where more adoptive families and agencies are recognizing the importance of transparency. But the truth is, whether it's open or closed, adoption is still going to carry questions. The adoptee is still going to go through moments of wondering, why did this happen? Who do I look like? Why wasn't I raised by them? And as adoptive parents or support systems, you have to make sure that these questions aren't met with shame or silence. Each of these comes with its own challenges, whether it's open or closed. There's going to be challenges and there's going to be blessings. And for the child, there's going to be confusion around identity and belonging. For the adoptive parent, There can be a deep joy in parenting, but also a responsibility to help their child process grief and loss. Now, I do want to take the time out to share my personal story of my adoption because I understand that real stories can help others to feel seen. So I was adopted by my biological mom's first cousin and her husband. And from what I was told, the circumstances surrounding my birth were pretty interesting. My biological mom kept her pregnancy a secret, so I did not receive proper prenatal care. And I was also told that I was born in a toilet somewhere in Delaware, then hidden in the back of a car until my biological grandmother discovered me. What a way to come into this world. I'm like a superhero, okay? I was then taken to the hospital, and at that point, my biological grandmother was already raising my sister, who is 3 years older than me, and said that she wasn't going to raise another one of my biological mother's children. Now, allegedly, I have a brother as well, somewhere out here. No one knows where he is, what's his name, how to find him. He is just out here somewhere. So my biological mom and grandmother were just going to leave me at the hospital. Yeah. But my great grandmother, she stepped in and she contacted my mom, who would become my adoptive mom, and asked her and her husband to take me in. Now, I was raised by them since infancy, days old. But my adoption wasn't finalized until I was in first grade. All of a sudden, my biological grandmother had a change of heart and decided she wanted to raise me with my sister. Now, I'd like to say that there were good intentions behind that, but there weren't. I'm going to say it how it is, and it is what it is. I was a check for her. If she took me in, I was a check for her. And so, because she decided that, my parents hired an attorney and the court ordered visitations began. I hated going to her house. She lived in Delaware. She lived in the cul-de-sac in Delaware, Bear, Delaware. I hated going to her house. The weekends I had to go, which was like every other weekend, I would kick and scream and just throw a fit because I did not want to go. When I would get down there, I wouldn't eat. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to ball up in a corner and just cry because I just didn't like being there. The vibes were off. It was something about that place. I just couldn't stand it. I remember towards the end of that, I had to go to court with my parents, and it was my first time. And I remember thinking, I'm going to have to sit on this stand like they do on TV, and the judge is going to be big and tall up in the sky, and I'm going to be little on this stand, and I'm going to have to raise my hand and say, I swear I'm going to tell the truth. And I get to court, and it's a table, and the judge is sitting at one end, my parents are on one side, my grandmother's on another side, and I sit at the end of the table across from the judge. And he asked me one simple question. Who would you rather live with? And I pointed to my parents, quick, fast, in a hurry, because I'm not living with that lady. They're not going to place me with her. No, I'm going back with them. That's where it's at. That's where I'm comfortable. That's where I'm safe. Safe. So after my adoption was finalized, My grandmother, she picked up and moved to Georgia. And I rarely saw her or my sister again. And as I got older, I had questions. I felt some pain about not being wanted by my biological mom and grandmother. But one thing I had to recognize is that me not being raised by my grandmother was a blessing. Blessing. Because I had a stable and loving childhood. And I'm so grateful that my mom and my dad raised me. I'm so thankful. I'm grateful. I'm happy. So I didn't grow up bad. My parents provided for me. They gave me everything that I needed. I may not have gotten all my wants. And as an adult, I understand that now, being a mother myself, your children are going to have wants and you're not going to be able to provide all those wants, but you have everything you need. You have everything you need. I want to say in my early 20s, my biological mother had a relationship with my sister. And I wanted to talk to her. I just wanted to know, like, why didn't you raise your kids? And where's my brother? And what happened to you to make you not want to be a mom to the kids you gave birth to? And why did you keep having kids if you knew you weren't going to take care of them? I don't know how true this is, but it was told to me that she didn't want anything to do with me. She did not want to talk to me. She wanted to leave things how they were. And at that moment, all feelings that I had about longing to know her and all the questions I had, they went away. They went right out the door. You know why? Because I had to realize I didn't lose out on anything. I didn't lose out on anything. I grew up just fine. But she lost out. She lost out on being a mom to her children. She lost out on getting to meet grandchildren that she has. But that's on her. That's not on me. But this experience, it just helped me to understand what it means to grow up adopted. And it shaped me into the kind of mother that I am today. And I am a great mother. Despite how I might feel some days, I may feel like I'm not doing a good job, but I'm a great mother to both my kids. And I'm a good mother figure to my bonus children as well. Adoption is so emotionally complex because it begins with loss. A child loses a parent. A child loses a birth parent. And a birth parent loses a child. And even in the most loving adoptive homes, there's still grief in the story. And that's why emotional awareness is so important. If you're an adoptive parent, it's not just about giving a child a home. It's about giving them space to ask questions, to feel confused or hurt, and to explore their identity safely. Now, my mom was pretty transparent with me in regards to my biological mom. But I also know that she just wanted to protect me. And she did her best to make sure that I felt love from her. And she did her best to make sure I was okay. Her and my dad. And while I did have questions when I was younger, like I said, once I became an adult, it was kind of like, why am I still worrying about these things? I didn't have a bad life. I grew up just fine. I did used to wonder, like, how my life would have been if I grew up with my biological mom and my sister, how different my life would have been, or if I was forced to live with my grandmother. Because, whew, yeah, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. Probably wouldn't be doing this right now if I was raised by her. But for adoptees, the journey is often filled with gratitude. You're so grateful, but you still wonder. You can be loved and still feel abandoned. And all of that is very much valid. It's very valid. If you're a mom of an adopted child, or if you were adopted yourself, you know how adoption impacts the way you parent. You might find yourself being extra intentional, making sure your child feels heard and seen, especially if you know what it's like not to have those feelings met. And if you're in the process of adopting, take the time to educate yourself on trauma informed parenting. Educate yourself on identity development and open communication. And be willing to hold space for your child's full emotional experience. Because doing that for them is a gift beyond measure. When I gave birth to my oldest child and I held him for the first time, I definitely questioned how people could just give their children up for adoption. Like how you could carry a child in your body and feel movements and feel kicks and flutters and all the things that come with pregnancy, and then give birth to this human being that you created and say, I can't raise them, someone else has to. It made me so emotional thinking about that. And that's not anything that I've ever expressed out loud. I've never expressed it out loud, but I questioned that when he was born because of my personal experience. And yeah, I was young, and yeah, I wasn't ready. And sometimes that is people's excuses for adoption. And that's okay. That's okay. Everyone is different. Everyone's story is different. And if you weren't ready, if you were too young, if you were in a circumstance where you just couldn't, it's okay. And I understand. I completely understand if that's something that you had to do. But for me, being an adoptee, I didn't want my child to grow up having the same questions that I had or feeling unwanted. So I have always been extra intentional with him, wanting him to know I love him. That is my baby. And making sure that I listen to him. I hear him out. You can come to me and talk to me. I am a safe space for you. Adoption, it's never simple. It's never simple, but it's so beautiful. So whether you're navigating it now or just learning more, know that your story matters. And if you're adopted like me, remember you are not a mistake. You are not unwanted. And that's easier said than done. It's easy to say you are not unwanted, but it's not easy to feel that when you are adopted. Because essentially, this person, they gave you up. And that can make you feel like you were unwanted. But you have a superpower because you were chosen. That's something special, to be chosen. And you are worthy of love and belonging. So I have an affirmation I want you to carry. I am whole, even with the pieces I never received. I am loved, even in the places I once felt abandoned. I am worthy of every good thing. Thank you for holding space for this important conversation. If adoption is a part of your story and you feel like you want to share, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a message, an email, send me a voice note if you have my phone number. Let's keep making this a space for real and raw connection. Until next time, this is for moms, a safe space. Be kind to yourself and your story.